Pre-Code era Hollywood was a brief blip in the American film industry's history between the widespread adoption of sound in motion pictures in 1929 and the mandatory implementation of the Motion Picture Production Code Censorship Enforcement Guidelines, most commonly known as the Hays Code in 1934. This era is known for presenting movies that were not nearly as censored as the films produced post-July 1934. The pre-code era was a significantly more exciting time to be a woman in Hollywood. It was also much more titillating to be an audience member. Filmgoers, whether they would admit it or not, were fascinated by watching pre-code bad girls like Mae West, Jean Harlow, Barbara Stanwyck, and Kay Francis break all the rules that supposedly kept society civil, safe, and unblemished. Keep watching to learn how some of the most prominent actresses of that time broke all the rules and looked fantastic doing it. Mae West, the first big Hollywood sex symbol. During the Great Depression, Hollywood was dealing with economic turmoil just like every other industry. Studios were running out of cash after making purchases of large theater chains and paying enormous salaries to stars. Besides MGM, who seemed to be doing relatively all right, all the big-name studios like Paramount and RKO were bleeding money. While the news reports claimed prosperous times were just around the corner, the box office and its shrinking sales said otherwise. Suddenly, a quarter of the nation was unemployed, and millions of people had exhausted their savings. To entice people back into theaters, studios knew they had to offer moviegoers something pretty enticing. In the early 30s, Hollywood unloaded its secret weapon against the warnings of a group of men known as the Studio Relation Committee, who were desperately trying to help the industry self-censor. The ace up Hollywood's sleeve was Mae West. From her earliest days in vaudeville to becoming a notorious sensation on Broadway, West was a self-made woman who carved out her own path unapologetically. The first play she wrote, Sex, opened on Broadway in 1926 and ran for 375 performances before being abruptly shut down by the police. West was charged with indecency and, quote, corrupting of the youth charges and sentenced to 10 days in jail. She served 8 before being released on good behavior, but West was anything but good. Mae West embraced her bad girl image and wasn't afraid to shake things up with her controversial views. Her subsequent forays into stage writing were equally scandalous. Take her play The Drag, for example. The production never made it to Broadway, but it featured a plot that explored the world of homosexuality, culminating in a colorful drag ball scene. A modified version of the production, entitled Pleasure Man, featuring a heterosexual lead, was eventually debuted in October of 1928. Despite the tweaks to its script, the entire cast and crew were arrested after just one performance. Mae's next play, Diamond Lil, which also hit the stage in 1928, defined her for decades. Set in the 1890s, the play presented the audience with material they would feel more comfortable with. As such, it became her biggest stage hit. Regardless, the SRC took offense to its material and placed it on their banned list. In 1932, West stole the screen from George Raft in a gangster comedy film Night After Night. It was a hit, which was great for Paramount, but left the SRC feeling nervous. Paramount began producing a film adaptation of Diamond Lil immediately after the success of the film. This led to the SRC going into full-on panic mode. They insisted the title be changed to avoid inevitable protests. Heeding their advice, Paramount rebranded the film as She Done Him Wrong. It went on to make $2 million at the box office in less than 2 months, pulling Paramount out of bankruptcy. Her next film, I'm No Angel, advocated for sexual freedom. It featured West's excessive hip movements and was dripping in deliciously off-color one-liners. This era of West's film career was nothing short of sensational. Unfortunately, by the time of her fourth film, It Ain't No Sin, the curtain was closing on the pre-Hays Code era. The emerging Production Code Administration ended up chopping that flick to pieces. West's next 8 films over the following 30-plus years were comparatively mundane comedies that relied upon the audience's nostalgia for her previously provocative, unexpurgated work. Before we tell you more, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Jean Harlow, the first blonde bombshell. Jean Harlow was known for playing bad girl characters and was one of the premier sex symbols of the pre-code era. She was famous for her laughing vamp screen persona and was frequently seen flaunting her sexuality in an uninhibited fashion that drew the ire of most conservative critics. She got her start in Hollywood, working as an extra in 1928. In 1930, she rose to prominence after appearing in her sexy role in Howard Hughes' film Hell's Angels. Overnight, people across the nation dyed their hair platinum blonde to match her iconic look. Her Her subsequent film roles capitalized on her image as being a smart aleck floozy, typically with a heart of gold. While she's now seen as being one of the legends of this era of film, Harlow had a rocky start in Hollywood. She had the looks, but her acting wasn't quite up to par. Throwing herself into her work and studying hard to improve her acting chops, Harlow's efforts paid off when she was signed to a long-term contract with MGM in 1932. And after producer Paul Byrne fought to cast her in Red-Headed Woman, Harlow was transformed into a superstar. That film role, coupled with her follow-up in Red Dust, earned Harlow the reputation for being one of the sexiest and funniest women in Hollywood. Even though her films became cultural touchstones, she quickly found herself embattled in censorship fights. In 1934, after the Hays Code was mandatorily enforced, Harlow was no longer able to express herself as freely as she once did. She went from being a woman who shunned wearing underwear to essentially becoming a diminished shadow of her formerly edgy self. No longer allowed to be as provocative as she had been in post-code films like Hold Your Man and Girl from Missouri, Harlow was relegated to more traditional female roles. A few years later, she died of uremic poisoning in 1937. Norma Shearer, the fiercely determined star. This Canadian-American actress was active from the early days of film in 1919 to 1942. Especially during the pre-code era, Shearer often played feisty, sexually liberated ingenues. She achieved fame despite having many obstacles to overcome in her early life. She knew from an early age she wanted to be a star, but after moving to New York City with her mother, after her father's family business went under during World War I, both Florence Ziegfeld and D.W. Griffith told her her dream of stardom would never materialize. Pushing these criticisms aside, Shearer doubled down on her efforts and eventually landed a series of minor roles in B-films. Eventually, she caught the attention of MGM. After appearing in several hit films alongside Monta Bell, Shearer became one of the studio's biggest moneymakers. After MGM implemented sound into their features in the mid-1920s, Shearer's acting career boomed. In 1930, she was given the lead role in The Divorce, stealing it away from Joan Crawford after commissioning a photo shoot with photographer George Harlow that showed her lounging around sexily in kimonos while amplifying her legs. Not only did that film show Shearer could be sexy, but it also proved to be a significant turning point in talkies. For the next several years, Shearer was one of the biggest sex symbols in Hollywood, but after the Hays Code was enforced, her career was never quite the same. Barbara Stanwyck, Kay Francis, and Joan Blondell. Barbara Stanwyck's career spanned more than 60 years, but her pre-code era offerings and public image were nothing short of groundbreaking. She got her start as a Ziegfeld girl in 1923 at age 16. In 1927, she landed her first lead role in the Broadway hit production Burlesque. After establishing herself as a Broadway star, Barbara began acting in talkies in 1929. She appeared in Frank Capra's romantic drama Ladies of Leisure, and then starred in films such as Night Nurse, Babyface, and the controversial feature Tea of General Yen. Stanwyck had the looks to melt hearts while rocking an attitude that made her fit right in during the pre-code era. Kay Francis was considered the queen of the Warner Brothers lot between 1932 and 36. She was one of the highest-paid actresses of her day and frequently presented in leading roles. She found great success in risque roles in films such as Trouble in Paradise and Jewel Robbery. Her sultry, seductive voice, witty attitude, and smoking hot looks made her immensely popular with audiences. Off-camera, she spent most of her time having affairs with both men and women. Unfortunately, in the post-code era, Francis quickly fell from grace and was branded as box office poison. From then on, she was demoted to mainly supporting roles. The last pre-code Hollywood rule breaker we'll discuss is Joan Blondell. She got her start in the vaudeville scene. After winning a beauty competition, Joan started a film career, establishing herself as one of Warner Brothers' pre-code staples. She was often seen in wiseacre, sexy roles and appeared in more than 100 films and TV shows. She was most popular in the 1930s, but by the 40s, after the Hays Code had been enforced, she lost much of her allure. She continued to act for the remainder of her life, but primarily in smaller supporting roles. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you know that pre-code Hollywood was so proactive, or did you think the late 20s and early 30s were a pretty conservative era for film? Let us know in the comments below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to FactsVerse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.